Thanks.
Someone's working, something happened to him.
Going to do it on his holiday.
That's right, it's just easier.
Okay, good afternoon, directors. Regional District Board meeting for Wednesday, August the 17th. I'd like to acknowledge that we are here on the unceded traditional territory of the Lakota speaking people. We do have confirmation quorum. I'll call the meeting to order. Can I have adoption of the public agenda, please?
Move adoption.
Davis and Lee,
Second, Wally.
thank you. No additions? Call question. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. And just so the directors out in virtual land, Director Cornfield, Colburn, Davis, Moglove, and Evans are here in the boardroom. At this time, we have petitions and delegations. Today, we have Molly Hudson and Aaron Racker from the Mosaic Forest Management. Welcome, and come on forward. And as per usual, our delegation is a 10-minute time limit with lots of time afterwards for questions. So welcome, and go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. As said, my name is Molly Hudson. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Mosaic Forest Management. Aaron is joining me today. I'll do most of the presenting just to provide you with a general update from our company. And Aaron is my backup when the challenging questions come later. So thanks to Aaron for being my support team today. So the purpose of today is just to provide you a general update with the company, provide the opportunity for any discussion. There's a few initiatives that I'd like to share with you, but really just a good opportunity to get in front of many of you face to face and some of you virtually as well. So let's start with a reminder about who is Mosaic. We are Canada's largest private timberland producer. We serve 50 mills in BC and also provide our logs to international customers. We're primarily a contractor organization, over 2,000 folks employed in our operations, harvesting, road building, tree planting, and more. In this region particularly, about $80 million a year from our company goes into the local supply chain, supporting the Campbell River and Strathcona economies. And we pay in the neighborhood of $13 million a year in property taxes across our land base to various municipalities and regional districts. We're focused these days on a significant investment in technology that includes a partnership with Canada's digital supercluster, bringing lots of innovation out into the field, into our industry to make people safer, make ourselves more efficient, and continue to provide a sustainable fiber flow to the forest economy. We are proudly Canadian-owned, and I'll touch on that in a minute after I cover the 3 certifications you see to the right of the slide there. We're very proud to be certified by the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business to the silver level. This is a framework that really crystallizes and makes clear our commitment to work with our Indigenous partners to support community development, to support business development, and to make ourselves a respectful and desirable partner for the First Nations communities in which we work. We are SAFE certified by the BC Forest Safety Council, and you'll see at the bottom there, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative is our forest management certification and really dictates our day-to-day practices to ensure that the work that we do in the woods is sustainable and we're providing long-term renewable resources to our customers downstream. And I'm not getting a forward slide here, Edith, if you could help, thank you. A couple other highlights. We've been operating for over 100 years on private lands on BC's coast, so really long-term commitment. We hope that carries on for the next 100 years. Our private lands provide a really reliable fiber supply, and as I'm sure you all know, we also operate on a number of Crown licenses in this region, TFL 47, and other forest licenses, so both public and private land interactions here in the Strathcona Regional District. I mentioned that we're owned by, there's an unfortunate animation happening there. Could you go back one, Edith? Thank you. We are owned by 2 Canadian public pension funds who are invested in us because they see that we have a commitment to sustainable, renewable forest management that aligns with their time horizons, supplying pensioners a living in their retirement, and they are very well aligned with our values, and we very much enjoy their backing in our practices here on Vancouver Island. And just a reminder, I mentioned that we supply 50 mills in BC. All of the wood that we produce is offered first to local millers before it can be sold overseas. So that surplus check ensures that local mills are offered our wood first. Just a quick touch on our values. Obviously, safety and wellness is our highest priority. Everything that we do is focused around this, including engineering the risk out, that innovation and automation piece that I spoke of, as well as a real culture around speaking about safety every single day in everything that we do. Our people are very important. We are focused, and myself in particular, on science-based environmental management in the sustainability department. And we value integrity in all of our relationships. And finally, superior performance to ensure that our owners are getting an appropriate return on their investment in us as an organization. And tied to that people value, we were really proud last year to be recognized as one of BC's top employers. And one of the things that was recognized by BC's Top Employer Association is that we've embedded a comprehensive diversity and equity and inclusion strategy into our business now. So really supporting a diverse range of folks in our industry and encouraging others to join us in the forest sector. On the community front, we donated over $500,000 to community associations across coastal BC primarily last year. Some of the big highlights are our partnership with the Pacific Salmon Foundation, but it goes all the way down to local organizations like Greenways Land Trust and the Campbell River Salmon Foundation. And additionally, we've invested over $125,000 in First Nations scholarships and training programs. And so that includes at North Island College, and that's really encouraging those young folks to get invested personally in the forest sector and bring all of their learnings and ability to share with us their culture into our organization and our sector as well. So now I'd like to just touch on an exciting initiative that we announced earlier this year called the Big Coast Forest Climate Initiative. This is a carbon credit opportunity on the voluntary carbon market. You can see the website there. I encourage you to check it out because I'm going to provide a very quick overview of this interesting and somewhat new idea that Mosaic has invested in. So this is the deferral of 40,000 hectares of our private timberlands from harvest for 25 years. So we've taken these areas that could be harvestable, we've removed them from our plan to harvest for the next 25 years. Apologies about the slideshow, I appear to have an automatic forwarding thing on there. And in these 40,000 hectares, about 80% of those lands are mature and old forest. So as we think about the priority areas for conservation and management, we've selected these areas to be set aside for 25 years. This is a voluntary market initiative, so any other company globally who has net zero commitments could be reaching out to us for to buy these carbon credits to support their own path to net zero. So Mosaic is committed to be net zero by 2035. We are not, this is part of our overall climate strategy, but we're selling these credits from our timberlands to other buyers. Everyone from local government all the way to big tech corporations has been interested in these kinds of initiatives. It's a nature-based solution. It has conservation focus. There's species at risk, key drinking watersheds, socially sensitive areas all included in this project. And we also have some really great partners in the Indigenous Protected Conserved Areas Innovation Center and the Pacific Salmon Foundation, who will receive revenue when we sell these credits to fund their own research and projects. And in particular, the Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas Association will be helping us work with nations to decide what's next after that 25 years. So each of those nations will be having an individual conversation with us and with the IPCA group to talk about, of these 40,000 hectares, what do we want to protect in perpetuity? What do we want to manage more as a cultural area? Are there land transactions that need to take place? So we've bought ourselves a quarter of a century in which our company will receive revenue from the carbon credits. We'll be actively working with nations on what comes next and potentially, contributing to long-term conservation and climate solutions. So it's something we're really excited about. There is a website, as I mentioned. I encourage you to look at it, and we can chat more about it later if there's some questions. I wanted to bring it back to some local community here. We are a big supporter of North Island College and happy to work with them on their coastal forestry programs, everything from bringing them out into the field to chat with them about how forestry works for us on a day-to-day basis, to supporting scholarships and bursaries at the college. You may have heard of some really good Earth Day cleanup events we've been doing for the last few years to combat the kind of illegal dumping issues that we see in some of these urban forest interface areas, great partnerships with regional districts there. We have 4 campgrounds in this district, most recently partnered with BC Hydro on the Upper Campbell Reservoir campground, which is partially on Mosaic Forest lands. And finally, we just recently announced a great partnership across our land base with ATV clubs to provide sanctioned access to our lands for ATV clubs on a safe and responsible and sanctioned basis. So we're really excited about that opportunity. We've been hearing from ATV clubs for many years that they'd like to work with us more closely. So that's just recently been announced. And finally, here on my last slide, just a couple of operational updates on a few areas of interest to the regional district. Earlier this year, we were really happy to announce that Waycay Ventures, a newly formed company owned in part by the Waywakai First Nation, is providing us with our timber harvesting services on Quadra Island. So great to see that nation working with us on our Crown tenures to participate in the forest sector in their traditional territory, expanding their existing interests in the forest sector. So that's been great. We announced that in May. One ferry further on Cortez Island. Last year, we opened the Gorge Harbor Access Terminal, which provides log dumping and barge facilities to that community, including the local community forest, who are now able to, put their harvest or their logs directly in the water in a more environmentally sensitive way. We also work with the Forest Trust for the Children of Cortez Island. Both on our carbon project, we collaborated with them on designating some areas on Cortez Island for the carbon project, and also in their interest in potentially purchasing some parcels of forest lands on Cortez Island for conservation reasons. The photo on the bottom there is of a nice partnership we had with the local volunteer fire department to support some new water tanks. And we've been talking a lot with the community on Cortez about upcoming harvest plans, which we intend to launch this fall. So with that, I hope I've stayed within my time, and I'll hand it back to you, Mr. Chair, for any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. Lots going on. Any questions from directors? Director Abram, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Molly, for that. And I would just ask that, is it possible to have that presentation emailed to us? Or to me, anyway.
Yes, absolutely. Edith already has it, so no problems from my perspective with sharing that around.
Okay, that way I can share it here on Quadra without having to actually, write it all up. Okay, thanks very much.
Of course. Thank you, Director.
It'll also be attached to the agenda too, Director Abram. Director Davis.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation. One question I have is, how much of this land we're talking about are private land, and do you also have TFLs?
Sure, I can take that one. Yeah, so from, let's say the Gold River Highway South is generally private land, and generally north is Crown land operations. So the Johnson Straits and the mainline coast areas that we work in, those are Tree Farm License 47, so Crown lands. But from the Gold River Highway South is generally private managed forest lands.
Any further questions? Director Moglov.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I was quite intrigued by that program that you have on the carbon credits, and I had a couple of questions about it. I'm not sure if you can answer all of them. So the first question I had was, in terms of, I think it was 40 hectares, the decision-making process as to which parcels to set aside, how is that done?
Yeah, so great question. It's 40,000 hectares, so it's quite a big project, and the only reason I correct you there is it's a significant scale, right? And it's distributed across our private land, so it's not, if you imagine, Strathcona Park being a big contiguous chunk, that's not how this project works. It's forest areas distributed across from Campbell River all the way down to Souk. The way we decided those areas is a set of criteria, primarily age. We wanted to have this project be focused around mature and old forests for conservation, wildlife habitat, water reasons. But one of the things that's required in order to generate that carbon credit is that those areas must be potentially harvestable. So we had to go through a big project, auditing kind of verification process with third-party auditors to show them that we're actually taking these areas and we're removing them from harvest plans, because the generation of the credit occurs by not harvesting an area that could be harvested. So these kinds of programs don't apply, or they don't work in parks or already conserved areas. You have to be newly conserving areas that are harvestable. So a big part of that decision-making process is working with Aaron's operational team, for example, and saying, what is harvestable in the future? Can we prove externally that we could harvest it? The economics work, it's accessible by road or helicopter or whatever is required, and we're now making the management decision to not harvest those areas.
Great, thank you. That was not a concern, but I wanted to clarify that issue.
Of course.
The other thing, I wasn't sure if I heard you correctly or I didn't understand. In terms of the selling of the carbon credits, the monies that come from the sale, what happens to those funds? Do they go into the general revenue of Mosaic, or are they earmarked for some specific projects?
Generally, the reason this project works for us is because it generates a financial return. We could harvest these areas and that generates us a return. That's how our business works. But the carbon market is now at a place where carbon credits, the dollar per CO2 equivalent, is enough that we can make money off of it by not harvesting. So we, Mosaic, receive a financial return, absolutely, general revenue, you could call it. And then we also have those extension partners that I mentioned, that every year that we are paid for carbon credits, we will provide some of that revenue to the Pacific Salmon Foundation and to the IPCA Innovation Center.
And just a couple more, if I might, Mr. Chair. So do you have a sense or like a forecast of what the amount of funds that you might generate from these carbon credits over the next few decades?
I can give you a general sense. We haven't sold any yet, so we are actually just clear of the auditing and verification stage and are preparing to go to market officially. But what I can tell you is that, you know, we've done enough kind of assessment work with some of our kind of carbon expert partners to know that it is at least as much or potentially more in some cases as the revenue we would generate from harvesting it for timber.
And just two more, I'm sorry. So will this project, the buying and selling, or
Yes.
will it be itemized separately? And this, you might not answer this one. Will it be itemized separately on your financial statements? And the reason I'm asking that is I happen to be on the Board of Trustees of the Municipal Pension Board. So for me as a trustee, I would want to see that separated out, and so at least get a sense of what the money coming in and.
Sure.
So do you know whether that will be the case?
I don't know if I can answer
Okay.
that one for you, Director, but certainly I can get back to you. Obviously, we're a private company, so we don't have the same kind of
Right.
public
Exactly.
statement process that a publicly traded company would. Certainly internally, it's going to be tracked, but I don't know how that filters through to organizations like yours.
Thank you so much.
Okay, of course.
Great, thank you. And Director Evans, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. And thank you for those questions, because I was really intrigued as well on how this is all going to unfold. But it sounds like it's still in progress. And so when are you thinking you'll go to market? What's kind of the timing on that?
In the very near future, we hope to have sold our initial tranche of credits by the end of this year.
Okay.
So we're engaging with interested parties already, and once we've just completed our audit, there's a whole kind of verification process that happens where the auditors report to the crediting agency. But once that is all kind of complete and wrapped up, and we're able to officially take our amount of credits for this year and put them on the market, we anticipate very good interest, and we're hopeful that by the end of the year we'll have sold this year's credits. But we generate credits every year for the next 25 years, so we'll be
right.
selling credits on an annual basis.
Right, okay. So thank you for that. And my question was also related to people. I know that's a big part of your strategy in terms of
Yes.
valuing your company.
Absolutely.
And so I just wondered, how are you finding, certainly in the marketplace, retention of employees and just the the loss of experienced employees, and how does that impact things, and what strategies what trends are you seeing, and what strategies are you using to ensure that experience continues to move through through your workforce?
Yeah, great question, and it's something we're thinking a lot about lately. And maybe I'll touch on the staff, and Aaron, you could highlight the contractor work that we're doing, which is very important as well. So on the staff front, yes, we're definitely seeing a transition. The market is very tight for many industries, including ours, and particularly when it comes to, all kinds of professionals, from accounting professionals to forest professionals. So, that diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy that I spoke about is a big part of, how do we reach out to more communities? How do we bring in folks who maybe, weren't a part of the forest sector before? We have a great, and something I'm really proud of, summer student program where we, reach out to all of our local schools and BC schools to bring in young future forest professionals or future professional biologists or future engineers. And we're finding now that a lot of our new hires come from those summer student ranks, which is great. And we've started recently to expand what we're kind of calling an internship program. So traditionally, our organization had a lot of managers and not a lot of entry-level positions. And so when those managers leave for various reasons, and in this case, lots of retirements these days, we didn't have those kind of younger ranks to fill and do that on-the-job training. So the internship program, and some of it is particularly targeted at Indigenous interns, so working with the BC Business Council on an Indigenous internship program to bring folks into our organization that way. But those interns, they generally are for more of a term position, but it gets them in our organization. It allows us to get to know them so that when full-time roles come up and we see that transition happening, we have folks who are already integrated in our group that can fill in those spots. And maybe the contractor, Aaron, thanks.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Colleen, because it's definitely a big struggle right now, right? I would say across our contractor community, you know, anywhere from loggers and road builders to, you know, on the professional services side, where there's probably about a 10% vacancy rate out there. And it's significant, it's not easy, and in a lot of places where traditionally there was none, right? The demand for those jobs was higher than there was, you know, vacancies out there. But so we've really focused a lot in the last few years on training, whether that's, you know, we do have one Mosaic-owned company crew out of Northwest Bay in Parksville. So we use them a lot for training, as well as a series of different incentives to support our contractors in training, right? You know, one of the things that there's not the same amount of level entry jobs in the forest industry anymore. You know, that's a big barrier to training. So trying to give some financial support to the contractors to encourage them on it, as well as support on how they can access some different government programs on training, particularly when you're dealing with First Nations. And sometimes just the administrative part of that becomes a barrier too, right? So support on both of those fronts, and you know, the idea being is even if you spend a bunch of money training someone, they don't end up working for you. Hopefully, they'll end up working for another contractor working for us, and you're just kind of building up that overall capacity.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, I've got Director Cornfield, and then I had Director Lee, but I don't see her anymore, so Director Cornfield and Director Moglove after that.
Thanks, Molly, for your presentation. I'm going to ask you some tough questions. Okay, good. Mosaic was a partnership between Island Timberlands and Timber West, correct, on the private lands? Can you explain how TFLs fit in there? Because
Sure.
private managed forest land is managed differently than Crown land under a tree farm license.
Yep, fair enough. Great question. So to rewind the clock to 2018 or 19, the owners of Island Timberlands and Timber West came together in what's called an affiliation agreement. And so Island Timberlands and Timber West still exist, but Mosaic Forest Management was created as a management company over those two previously separate companies. So at that stage, Mosaic, you know, all of the Timber West folks, including Aaron and myself, we become Mosaic staff. There are no kind of Timber West staff anymore, but the land title is still owned by Timber West and Island Timberlands, and the same applies to the Crown lands. So Mosaic manages the Crown licenses, but they are still held by Timber West in name.
Right, okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does, thanks. What manufacturing facilities for value added do you have north of Nanaimo?
So we are not a value-added company generally. We manufacture logs to customer specifications, and many of those customers are value-added manufacturers. So we don't run manufacturing facilities. We're always thinking about opportunities to expand, and particularly as we think about the Clean BC plan that the province has announced on reducing the burning of slash piles and all of the incentives around carbon neutral fuels. You know, we think about things like biofuels and pellets and, you know, ways for us to manage the wood waste that is a result of our harvesting. Yes, other than thinking about those things and looking for opportunities to invest, we don't run any manufacturing facilities.
Okay, so that Island Timberlands and Timber West, the Mosaic
Yes,
has no manufacturing facilities.
that's correct.
Okay. Final one. Good to see that you managed to let them get 25 years for carbon credit, because that is a very short time frame, especially when it comes to forests. I'd looked at it for the city years ago,
Okay,
doing our carbon credits when carbon credits first came out. My concern here is you set aside 40,000 hectares,
that's right.
so not harvested, but harvestable. So what happens to the allowable annual cut?
Our private land harvest levels are reduced commensurate with that 40,000 hectares.
Okay, and I guess that's what concerns me, because allowable annual cut, if you reduce that, then you reduce the harvesting. That's the employment of loggers, road builders, contractors, and everything else. So the company might make more, but what about the impact to the communities?
Yeah, great question. The level that was reduced for this 40,000 hectares, we don't anticipate having an impact on labor. You know, we very much are still going to operate this very large land base as a working forest. And these, you know, areas that have been set aside for the carbon crediting program, you know, are a part of a network of, you know, similar to the land use planning processes that I'm sure this organization goes through. There are some areas designated for carbon, and the vast majority of our land base remains designated for forest harvesting, for timber production. And so we don't anticipate negative economic impacts to our labor force or to the communities who support that labor force.
Even though you're removing 40,000 out of production.
That's right.
That's, I'll wait and see how things progress.
Sure.
And see, but that was the last of my potentially difficult questions.
Thank you, Director.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah, I will.
Excellent, thank you. And then I've got Director Lee, and then second time, Director Moglove. Director
Thank
Lee.
you, Molly. Thank you, Molly, for your presentation. My question is, once land is like 80% of the land base, 80% plus of the land base in my electoral area is private managed forest lands. And I'm concerned about the replanting of areas that have been harvested. It seems to me that the enforcement of that through the Private Managed Forest Council is quite loose. And it's important for the environment and for the communities long term to know that they're going to have forests in the future. And so I think that I'd like to know more about whether, how long is it after you log a section of forestry, private managed forest land, that your company and the companies that you oversee replant them?
Great, thanks for the question, Director. Yes, so we reforest essentially 100% of our harvest areas, and our average at last check a couple of months ago was within 9 months of harvest completion. So that's a very good turnover rate, you know, more a better turnover than you would see on many Crown licenses. You can imagine that if you're managing a private asset that grows trees, you want to grow those trees as continuously as you can, right? Every month that we wait, every growing season that we wait to put those trees in the ground is a foregone growing season. So we are heavily invested in getting our reforestation happening as soon as possible after harvest. And you know, we're planting in the neighborhood of 10 million seedlings on our private lands per year. So it is a massive program with lots of staff and lots of resources allocated to it. We do have obligations under the Private Managed Forest Act to reforestation with ecologically suitable species within set timeframes. We're inspected by the Private Managed Forest by the Managed Forest Council on an annual basis. They're going to come visit us next week in this neighborhood, actually. And if you're ever hearing any concerns, Director, about particular areas not being reforested appropriately, that Managed Forest Council, their job is to respond and investigate those kinds of concerns. If we're always happy to hear about it directly and work with any concerned constituents you may have directly, but the Managed Forest Council, our regulators, are also available to answer any of those concerns.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have Director Moglove.
Yeah, thanks. I have thought of one more question, and that is, I was curious, of the 40,000 hectares that are being set aside, how much in this area or North Island?
I'll admit I don't have the number handy. It's fairly evenly distributed across our entire land base. So, I'll ballpark, Aaron, if this is a third, your operation is a third of our land base?
Probably a little less.
A quarter?
Quarter, yeah.
Yeah, so, potentially a quarter of the carbon areas are in the operation up in the North Island. Thanks. That's very ballpark.
And Director Colbert.
40,000 hectares set aside. What percentage of that is that of your land base?
It is, I believe it's 7%.
Thank you so much.
It's in the neighborhood of 10, let's say, just so that I don't hold myself to strict numbers, but that's around there.
Excellent. I don't see any further hands up. Last call, don't see anything. Okay, well, thank you very much, Aaron and Molly. Very great presentation and some great questions from directors.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time, and don't hesitate to reach out if anything else comes up.
What was the webpage again?
BigCoastForest.com.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to motion to receive the presentation.
So moved, Colburn.
Second, Colburn and Evans. Thank you. Any discussion? Call questions? Anyone opposed? Carried. Moving on, item E, adoption of the regular minutes for the July 13th meeting.
So moved, Colburn.
Second, Corn.
Second.
Colburn and Cornfield. Any discussion? Seeing none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Any business arising? Nothing. Public consideration, nothing. No notice of motion. My chair's report. I've got a couple items here. The first one, I don't know if all the directors are aware, but I sadly have to acknowledge the passing of former board director, chair, mayor of Sayward, John McDonald, passed away on August the 2nd. The service will be held on August the 27th in Sayward at the Kelsey Center. On behalf of the board, I send condolences to Sue and the family. And in the bit right up in the paper, Sue was asking for donations to the Sayward Tour de Rock Committee. At this time, the board has not sent any flowers or card at this time, so if the board wishes to make a motion to make a donation to the Tour de Rock, I would accept that. Maybe something like $250 or something, I don't know, just picking a number. The only other item on my report is GBCM minister meetings. We have no confirmation at this time of dates and times, so as soon as we do, they'll be sent out to you by email. So, motion to receive my report. Evans and Cornfield, thank you. Discussion? Director Cornfield.
Could you, what was the date for John's service?
August the 27th, it's at 1 o'clock in the Kelsey Center in Sayward.
Chair,
Director Adams.
thank you. I would like to make a subsequent motion that the Regional District Board donate $200 to the Tour de Rock and also provide a bouquet of flowers and card for the celebration of life for John McDonald.
Moved in second.
Second.
Baker, second.
Thank you, Director Baker. We'll take that as a seconder. Thank you. Any further discussion? Director Cornfield?
Very quickly, Where would the money come from?
Mr. Chair, General Admin.
Okay, no, but I meant, didn't we have I thought we set up or is that grants and aid only, or?
I think it would be appropriate just for general admin. I mean, we're talking about total $250, I would say.
Okay. Would the mover be happy if we raised it a bit? I think of all of the years that John served, both in Sayward and on this board.
You want to make a
Yeah, an amendment.
Seconder would be.
Or a friendly,
friendly?
Yeah.
The amount?
to a total of 500.
Second that.
Adams? He's got his thumbs up, thank you. So it's friendly amendment to $500. Seconder, okay with that? Director Baker?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And I don't know if any directors are going to be able to make it. Unfortunately, I cannot. I've got to go River Days. I'm at a wedding in Comox that night, so unfortunately I cannot. But in case somebody does, that would be nice. Director Cornfield says he'll be there. Thank you. Thank you. Next item, committee chair report. First item is the Electoral Area Service Committee for July the 13th. Motion to receive.
So moved. Abram.
Director Abram, second.
Second.
Director
Second,
Lee.
Director Lee.
Kill. Any discussion? Seeing none. Question on receipt. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 2, Strathcona Gardens Commission report. Motion to receive the minutes for the July 13th meeting.
Move receipt.
Evans and
Second.
Adams, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. No external reports, staff reports. Item 1, M1, Environmentally Sensitive Area Development Permit Plan Application. Motion to receive the report.
Receive.
Cornfield, and sorry, I didn't hear the second one.
Director Lee.
Director Lee, thank you. And I'll go to CAO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. On receipt, I'll call question. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. And item B, development permit
Move B. Move B.
Group B, Director Lee. Seconder,
Wally.
Director Wally, thank you. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Parkland dedication, April Point. Motion received report from the CEO.
I'll move. Abram.
Abram,
Second.
Wally, and the CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Kill. On receipt then, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none, carried. And item B, Parkland dedication from April Point Development
So
Limited.
moved. Abram.
Abram and Wally. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 3, school district and local government election agreements. Motion to receive the report.
Move receipt, Colburn.
Colburn and Cornfield. Any discussion, CO?
Nothing to add unless Mr. Yates wants to speak this.
Not really, Mr. Chairman. I think the board has seen similar agreements, other agendas, so these are pretty much the standard that we would look at for election proceedings upcoming.
Great, thank you. On receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none, carried. Item B, the chair and the corporate officer be authorized to execute the proposed 2022 election agreements with the villages of Bellis, School District 84, Magorana West.
Colburn.
Colburn?
Move B, Colburn.
And seconder,
Wally.
Davis, thank you. Any further discussion? Call question. Is anybody opposed? Carried. Item 4, quarterly report for the BC Ombudsperson.
Move receipt, Colburn.
Kill. Colburn and Cornfield and CO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a regular report we received from the BC Ombudsperson. As you can see from the report, in that quarter, we had one complaint with no investigation. So I don't think there's much more to add.
Thank you. On receipt, call questions. Anybody opposed? Seen none, carried. Item 5, proposed fire protection service, Duncan Bay, Race Point. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Wally,
Second.
Lee, and the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Tom will speak to this.
Gil?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as noted in the report, staff have been working for approximately a year on this initiative, and the board basically has, in response to a request from the City of Camel River Fire Department, asked staff to look into this issue. So what we have found fairly early on is that the situation in the Race Point Road area is quite different than Duncan Bay Gordon Road, and so we're suggesting to the board that the two areas be separated for the purposes of further evaluation, which seems to make a lot of sense to us as staff and also apparently to the Camel River Fire Department. So we're looking for the board's concurrence with that position and moving forward on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. On receipt, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, carried. And item B, the Race Point area be considered separately from the Duncan Bay Gordon Road area for the purpose of evaluating the proposal by the City of Camel River to supply fire protection services under contract.
Move B.
Wally,
Second, Colburn.
Colburn seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 6, Cortez Island Refuge Collection. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Move receipt.
Wally and Lee.
Second.
And the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Wolf will speak to this.
Gil.
Yeah, through the chair and the CEO, to the board members, good afternoon, everyone. This is a report that, this is a report that speaks about the revisions that we're proposing to the contract with BMA Contracting. BMA Contracting is the operator of the collection of household waste on Cortez Island. These revisions align with the bylaw 469 that was recently passed by the board pretty much over a month ago. And some of the recommendations that we're making, or some of the revisions that we're making to the contract related to the adding recycling pickup as part of the contractor's duties and responsibilities. That's something that we just discovered that is being done, and we want to keep doing that. As well, the increase of the number of eligible dwellings. We have, for the last couple of years, we noticed that, more dwellings are to be included so they can meet the requirements of the bylaw. And as well, having a process included that speaks about how are we going to deal with volumes of recyclables that exceeds the contractor's pickup responsibility. So in communication with the contractor on Cortez Island, they have reviewed the contract. They have agreed to the proposed changes that we're making, and our recommendation to the board today is to authorize the chair and the corporate office to execute the contract or to execute the proposed modification agreement that we have including with this report, and have a contract modified with BMA Contracting.
Excellent, thank you. And I have a question, Director Anderson. Go ahead.
Thank you. I support the contract amendment as presented. And just a real procedural question on the ground. I've got a couple of questions from constituents who say that they have been, it's been determined that they have an extra house or dwelling when they don't, or perhaps they got mixed up with a neighbor, et cetera. And I expect in this kind of situation where extra dwellings are being counted for these purposes, that is inevitable. But just wondering what the process is, the sort of the complaint or rectification process would be.
Yeah, thank you, Director Anderson, for your question. You're totally correct. We have received a number of calls since the bills or the utility bills were issued to residents on Cortez Island. basically they're claiming that they don't have an eligible dwelling, and something that we have to confirm. We have attempted to go to Cortez Island twice within the last couple of weeks. We haven't been unlucky to arrive there. We missed the ferry, and we're planning another trip once the season kind of like the busy season slows down. So we're planning a trip for the second week of September. We are responding to all these requests, and we're letting residents know that if we find out that the dwellings that they have on Cortez Island don't meet the language of the bylaw, that we will remove those bills from our system. So it's based on a list that we receive from the operator, and we have to go in person and confirm these dwellings.
Great, thank you, because the operator clearly doesn't go on to everyone's property, and so I'm glad to hear there's a process. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other further questions? Seeing none, I'll call question on receipt then. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. And item B, move the chair and corporate officer be authorized.
So moved.
Anderson?
Second.
And Cornfield? Any further discussion? Call question. Is anybody opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Earthquake early warning system. Motion to receive the reports from CEO. Colburn?
So,
And
Second.
Cornfield? And I'll go CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wolf will speak to this as well.
Through the chair and the CAO to the board members, thank you. This is a report that speaks about changes proposed by Natural Resources Canada to the collaboration agreement. Just a little bit of a refresher about the funding that we received from Natural Resources Canada to install 16 earthquake early warning stations. We received $1.94 million, or we will be receiving $1.95 to supply the sensors and install them on all these remote areas that have been identified by NRCan and that align with the Connected Coast project. We, back in March 2022, the board passed a recommendation to execute the two contracts. One is the contribution agreement and the collaboration agreement. Once we sign the two contracts, we forward that information to NRCan Canada, and NRCan Canada came back to us with some changes, and some of the proposed changes that they gave us have been reviewed internally, and we don't see any problems. The first one is related to the completion date or the termination date that changed from March 31st, 2024 to April 1st, 2024. That's just 1 day difference, very minor. The second one is related to the Canadian Hazardous Information Service. They want us to change that to responsible party to be Natural Resources Canada. So it is their change, and it's not for us. And the last one is related to the cybersecurity policy that they have in place. So they didn't include enough language, and they decided to attach a few pages that we have reviewed internally, and we don't have any concerns as well. All these modifications and the modifications done to this collaboration agreement does not impact the scope of work, the timelines, or the budget that we have for the project. And we do not have any concerns with the cyber securities clause that they included, as this will be part more of the operations and maintenance of the equipment once it's all installed. Our recommendation to the board is to have the chair and the corporate office to be authorized to execute the contract with Natural Resources Canada for the earthquake early warning system project for phase 1.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Any questions on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item B? Move B. Evans and Cornfield. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Next item, number 8, Baylink contract. Motion received report from CEO.
Move receipt.
Cornfield
Second.
Wally. And go CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wolf will speak to this as well.
Go.
Thank you. This is a report to consider and awarding the contract to Baylink Networks to procure, supply, and install the sensors for the earthquake early warning system. If we look at the time when we signed the contribution agreement with NRCan and the time that we have right now to select the contractor, there's a big gap. So we were identifying a type of template with our lawyer that works really well for this kind of scope of work. Finally, that has been finalized, and this is the reason why we're only introducing this report at this time. So basically, it is a sole contract. Basically, we don't have any option to go out and tender this and find a different contractor. There are some great efficiencies here by having Baylink Networks to procure and also install, as they are the same contractor who is currently doing the installations for the Connected Coast project. So as they have that plan and they progress with that plan, they can help us with the installation of these sensors, and this is the main reason why they have been selected. They were part of the application process where they provided a budget to us. That budget was submitted to NRCan and approved by NRCan as well. So basically, Baylink will be responsible for procuring, permitting, the design, the selection of the sites and the locations, working with us in NRCan to actually supply the 16 sensors for the earthquake early warning system. And our recommendation, again, is to have the chair and the corporate office to be authorized to sign the contract between SRD and Baylink Networks.
Okay, thank you very much, Wolfgang. Any discussion? On receipt, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. And item B, Chair and corporate officer to be authorized. Cornfield?
B.
And Wally, thank you. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 9, Emergency Operations Center, grant distribution. Motion to receive the report.
Second, Colburn.
Evans and Colburn, and I'll go to the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom will speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the board was successful in obtaining a grant from the province, or from UBCM rather, for the earthquake, for the Emergency Operations Center, which included, I believe, about 8 or 9 different projects. What we're proposing is that some of that money, a good deal of it actually, be provided to different municipalities and First Nations to get on with the work. And before we do that, that we have letters of understanding with those entities to ensure that the money is used for the purpose for which it was approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call question on receipt then. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item B, the grant amounts listed in the August 12th, 2022 report from the CAO be approved as grants from the Regional Emergency Preparedness Budget, and the grants be released upon execution of letter of understanding confirming of the intended use of funds.
So moved.
Second.
Davis and Cornfield. Any further discussion? Director Cornfield.
Cayuga checklist is, sorry, Cayuga checklist is part of our board now. So Hadasat is the only other First Nation, correct?
They're the only other First Nation on here that we included in the application form for the equipment that you see.
We have an agreement in place with Hadasat?
We don't, but what this report says, that we have a letter of understanding that they will install this equipment. We'll give them money and they will install the equipment or purchase it.
Okay, I guess. We don't have an agreement with them if we're going to contribute this money.
Mr. Chairman, that is what is being recommended here, that we have a letter of understanding to confirm the use of the money for the project that was approved, for which the grant was approved. And keep in mind that when the board made this application, originally it was a regional grant with a number of partners, including several municipalities and First Nations. So this is really a reflection of what was applied for in the grant that was submitted. And since we're approved, getting on with the work would be more efficiently done if we had our partners actually doing a good deal of it. So that is the basis for the request.
Cool. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, carried. Item 10, Preserve Tax Exemption 2023 for Surgeon Narrows Community Association. Motion receives
receipt,
report to
Abram.
CEO.
Second,
Abram.
Coburn.
Abram and Colburn, and I'll go to CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom will speak to this.
Go.
Oh, sorry, Mike Armston.
Hi, thanks. This is just a renewal of the permissive tax exemption for the Surge Narrows Community Association. They've been approved for the last number of years and are seeking another approval for 2023. Thanks.
Cool. And Director Abram?
And, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to see this item before us once again, another year. This Surge community has worked very hard to preserve as much of the core of the community over many years, and this is adjacent to the piece of land that we purchased as a regional district, 6.5 acres. So it's all right in the core. It's been purchased by donations and hard work by the community, and everything we can do to help them out, even this small amount, is appreciated by the community. So when it's time, I would like to move the motion to permit the exemption.
Cool. Anything further on receipt, Director Mogul?
Yeah, thanks. I just had a question in terms of process. Like at the city, we have our permissive tax exemption bylaw allows for multiple year exemptions, so organizations don't have to apply each and every year. Is there anything like that at the SRD, or could one move to that
No.
type of a system?
No, we have no system like that. I believe we can, though. I'd have to check with Tom, but yeah, we could look into that for future years to save some paperwork.
Cool. Don't see anything further on receipts. I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. And Director Abram?
Yes, thank you very much. I'd just like to move B, that a bylaw be prepared for the board's consideration, which would allow a permissive tax exemption for 2023 for all land in property classes 01 residential for District Law 302. Bunch of numbers for the Surge Narrows Community Association of Reed Island.
Cool.
Second, Coburn.
Colburn seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 11, Princess of Tax Exempt 2023 for Royal Canadian Legion Branch 154. And I'll go back to
Receipt,
Mike.
Abram.
Motion received by Abram. Second by
Second.
Cornfield. And I'll go to Mike.
Thank you. Much like the last one, this is another tax exemption for the Royal Canadian Legion, and the board's approved this for the last number of years. Nothing more to add. Thanks.
Gil? On receipt, I'll call.
I'd just
On
like to
receipt?
say that when we get to it, I'd like to make a subsequent, another motion
Gil, on receipt, I'll call
after
question.
this.
Anyone opposed? Carried. And Director Abram?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a motion that a bylaw be prepared for the board's consideration, which would allow the permissive tax exemption for 2023
Gil?
for the Quadra Royal Canadian Legion Branch, Harriet Bay.
Seconder?
Second,
Lee, thank you.
Lee.
Any further discussion? Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 12, Director Remuneration Expense Audit. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
On receipt. So moved.
Colburn and Evans. On receipt, I just want to have a couple words, if you don't mind. I just want to thank Director Abrams, staff, Director Moglove for the time effort in dealing with this difficult issue. And I just want to let the directors know that Vice Chair Moglove and I would support option A in the report. And that I've had discussions with Director Abram, and he stated to me that he would support the findings of the final report from the Finance Department. Saying that, on receipt, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. And Director Wally?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move option A from the staff report, that the additional information gathered by the subcommittee be provided to the SRD Finance Department for a second review of payment validation based on the updated details supplied by Director Abram, and that a report be prepared for the board's consideration at the September 21, 2022 meeting.
Thank you. And I have a seconder is Director Cornfield. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call question. Is anybody opposed? Carried. Thank you, directors. Item 13, request for financial assistance, Quadra Concert Society. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
So moved.
Cornfield.
Motion to receive.
And Abram. And I'll go CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Go. On receipt. Call questions. Anybody opposed? See none, carried. And item B, that the board approve a grant for the Quadra Concert Society in amount of $2,000 to assist in the 2022-2023 Quadra Island Concert Series to be paid from the Electoral Area C grant.
Move item B, Abram.
Go. Seconder.
Second.
Second by Lee. Any discussion? Call question. Anybody opposed? Carried. Bylaws. First item, bylaw 470, financial plan amendment. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
So moved.
Cornfield and Colburn, I believe it was. Evans, thank you. And I'll go CEO.
And nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Go. On receipt. Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item B, bylaw 470 being bylaw to amend the 2022-2026 financial plan, capital expenditure program now being introduced and read for the first time.
Move first reading.
Cornfield and Lee. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item C, rules be suspended for bylaw 470 be to give second and third readings.
Move second and third.
Lee, Cornfield.
Second.
Any discussion? See none. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item D, bylaw 470 being 2022-2026 financial plan and capital expenditure program bylaw amendment number 1 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
Move D.
Cornfield.
Move adoption.
Lee. Any discussion? See none. Anyone opposed? Carried. Correspondence. Director Adams? No? Okay. Correspondence. First item. Amicus Welcome House. Motion to receive correspondence.
Move receipt of 1 to 3, please.
Second.
1 to 3 has been moved. Any discussion? I'll just quickly say that the Welcome House for Malcha Mushlet, they've been working on this for many years and it's going to be absolutely gorgeous when it's done. Thank you. Okay, call question on items 1 to 3. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 4, active transportation planning. Motion received.
Move receipt.
Director Lee.
Second, Colburn.
Colburn. Anything to add? Question, anyone opposed? Carried. Aquaculture transition.
Subsequent, move that a grant application be made by staff to MOTI on behalf of the Cortez Island Active Transportation Plan.
Have a seconder?
Second.
Second for discussion. Go ahead, Director Lee.
Thank you. Well, Cortez has put forward some plans for improvements to their connectivity and their transportation network. And so at least they have something to look at when the staff apply for these grants from MODI. And maybe they'll be more successful in getting them delivered if they get the grant funding.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Carried.
I would move 5.
Item number 5 has been moved. Seconder by Director
Second.
Ray. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I just want to, just on receipt, and just to comment that it's extremely disappointing that the dates for these important discussions are constantly changing at the last minute with no consultation as to, and I can't help but think that this is to limit the engagement for these sessions, which are extremely important. I know that Mayor Baker was thinking that there was a meeting this morning. I believe that date was changed, and then it was changed back and then restricted only for First Nations inclusion. But maybe the rationale for the continued changes in dates is they don't want to hear what we have to say. So I will be expressing my displeasure to through our MLA to the minister, and also we'll bring this up at future discussions because there are other dates planned for next week, and hopefully they actually take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adams, and I agree 100%. Thank you. Director Cornfield?
I want to go one step further. When I look at the list and it had Thursday, August 11th, Friday, August 12th, too damn late for us, so sad. The next one is August 19th and then Thursday, September 1st. I believe that we should be designating someone from the regional district, whether it's staff or elected officials, to participate in these engagements, because the world's run by those who show up. And I think we need to make sure that this has a huge economic impact to our entire regional district, to the entire North Island. And I appreciate the work that the chair has done in the past in conjunction with other mayors from the North Island. And I think we need to be there in person and included with staff as well, to make sure that we hear the presentations, we can question it, we can then get the written response back. And I think what we've got is a pseudo attempt at engaging. And I know Director Abram and myself at various marine planning processes on the coast have been pushing, including at the Oceans Protection Plan. We made it quite clear that there had been no consultation with local governments. And it is unacceptable. And we need to continue making and carrying that message forward. The Deputy Minister who attended OPP, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I believe it was the Deputy and not the Minister himself, made the commitment that they would actively engage with local governments. This is kind of lip service when they don't give sufficient warning and notice so that it can come to our board. I think they'd be pretty annoyed if we said, oh, by the way, we passed a bylaw restricting no fisheries offices in Campbell River. We made it last week, but we'd like to know what you think. It's the same I get very annoyed with stuff like this. There's no excuse for it. If they were intentionally trying to engage us, there would have been a lot more notification and everything else. And I think this is unacceptable, and we need to convey that message to our MP, not our MLA, but to our MP, and I expect her to carry that message forward.
Okay, thank you. I've got Director Baker and Abram, so Director Baker.
I want to thank our colleagues for what they said. I agree with both of them. I found this process to be, and almost as Director Adams has pointed out, deliberate in the dates and the emails that were sent, especially to our North Island mayors. The dates have been off and on and changed and a bit confusing. There was a couple of North Island mayors waiting for the meeting today because of this confusion. And I think the displeasure that Director Adams is going to vocalize to the minister, I think is very appropriate. And I hope I hope they understand that this is not the proper way to proceed. And I do believe it's an opportunity for them to say, yes, we reached out to local government and most of them didn't show.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my feeling. It's been very disappointing, and I'm glad it's going to be vocalized to the powers that be. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Abram.
Thank you very much. And I have to agree with Charlie, Director Cornfield, sorry. We both have made this point, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of times at every one of the processes. He's not on all of them, but I am. And every single one, every single time, local government, local government, local government. And yes, it'll be there. Next time, still not there. Well, I've got the invitation right here, which I got from Joyce Murray on August 5th. It says that Fisheries and Ocean would like to invite you to these presentations, and they list 3 of them. Only one of them which I can possibly attend. And I have been on this transition team since it was initiated by Bernadette Jordan, the last minister of DFO, and along with Terry Beach, an MP, and Finn Donnelly, an MLA. So I've met with them informally in phone calls, and I've met with them twice in Zoom meetings. And another person from the feds, that's Joyce Murray's, might be DM, Don McDonald. Okay, so I've met with all those people, but I have to say, I think you're giving DFO too much credit in saying that they have purposefully changed these dates, and I'm not defending them, believe me. I would say it's ineptness rather than intentional. And I've witnessed it over and over and over again, where all the meetings are set up, everybody gets all lined up, and then nothing happens, and we get a notice, oh, by the way, we changed it to another date. And then we get another notice, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to note that I have registered for the August 19th session, which is called an overview session, information on the mandate, previous reports, draft framework, and engagement plan. So this is going to be mostly information out. The minister will be there, I've been told, along with all of these other dignitaries. And then there will be some discussion. But what I wanted to point out very clearly is that in addition, and this is what I'm going to do now, is in addition to these advertised 3 sessions, they have also included online public consultation. Okay, and this is in the invite, and I believe staff will have received this invite. I think it went to Edie. It's engagement and consultation plans, and it goes through various time frames, most of them, like phase 1 is late July to early September. phase 2, September to December, phase 3, January to March, March to June for 4. So we have at least 1, 2, 3, 4 more online opportunities to express as much as we want in the way of information to them, including attachments, whatever. But these first 3 sessions, I think, are going to be basically PR moves on their part. I do feel obligated to attend the one overview session that I can make because I'm not booked, but that date will at least give me further information as one of their appointees from way back when, and I'm still appointed, on their transition to. I would feel like they would very definitely say, oh, we invited local government. They come if I don't show up because, I told them all along, hey, local government. Charlie told them all along, hey, local government. So now they've actually included the words. Look at that in the paragraph, August 22, engagement opportunities. First Nations, Indigenous organizations, industry, local governments, and environmental non-governmental organizations. So they finally put the 2 words in there in one paragraph. So, I'm sorry to laugh at it, but I'm feeling the same frustration you guys are feeling about being ignored. And I think, if you want to appoint some people or whatever, that's great. But, I will be attending as their invitee to this as a meeting with a minister, because I'm sure she will open it as she has in the past. Before it was Bernadette, now it's Joyce.
Yes.
And then we will go from there. But, I think going to the MP is the answer, not the MLA, because Finn Donnelly is there, I think, as a token gesture because of the land and water addition to Josie Osborne's ministry. So anyway, those are my long-winded comments. I'm very sorry to take up so much of your time.
Okay, thank you, Director Abel. And just a couple points there. The elected officials, including yourself, have been asked by the minister to join in these discussions, whether we're appointed or not. We've been asked to it. And as far as who we contact, as far as MLA and MP, the North Island mayors, and I'm hoping I'm not speaking out of turn to the other North Island mayors that are on this meeting today, is we reached out to our MP and got nowhere. We reach out to our MLA, and our MLA is the one that's done the work for us.
Okay, great.
So, anything else on discussion, Director Cornfield?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that we all received the list and the invite from the minister. I will have a subsequent motion following receipt.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on receipt? Seeing none, call questions. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, carried. And Director Cornfield, you have a subsequent.
I would move that the Strathcona Regional District formally participate in the transitional planning process from open net pen salmon farming in British Columbia.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just
Director
to
Cornfield?
explain it, I think it's important that we have formal participation, and that's recognizing and delegate someone. I'll leave it to the chair and staff's discretion, but I think it should be one elected, one staff, and with a report to come back.
Okay.
Then I'd leave it up to you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Correspondence number 6, Fire Department grant funding payment. Motion received.
Move receipt, Colburn.
Colburn, second.
Second.
Lee, any discussion? Seeing none, call questions. Anybody opposed? Carried. Item 7, we become land transfer. Motion receive.
Move receipt.
Cornfield, seconded.
Colburn, second.
Colburn, any discussion? Director
Yes.
Cornfield?
Once again, as your representative on the treaty process for the Weewacum Treaty, there has been no discussion. We haven't even seen maps of the area. There is no maps attached showing where this several thousand hectares of land is even located. And I just wanted to make sure, 2,276 hectares, roughly 5,000 acres. And I believe it is in Director Wally's Area A, although I don't know because we don't have a map. And I did notice that Director Wally wasn't notified or invited to participate, even though the land affected is in their jurisdiction. And to me, this is one more example of all parties involved in this. I'm not just going to say the government, but all parties involved, that they are ignoring local government once again. And it is entirely disrespectful. It is not the way things should happen. It's not whether we support or don't support reconciliation or anything else. It's about the proper process. And there are people who have vested interests there, and I think particularly the electoral area director and this organization, and it is part of our watershed. Yeah, so it's I find it just very annoying and disrespectful, and it's not about the decision that was made, it was the process that was followed or lack thereof. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Director Abram?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Charlie answered part of my question, but I'm not sure it was quite clear. My question was through to our representative on the TAC, being Director Cornfield. First of all, were you invited to? And secondly, were you present at the meetings of the TAC where this item was discussed?
No and no.
Okay, so if that's the case, then I would like to make a subsequent motion after you've received this.
Okay. Any further discussion on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call question. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. And Director Abram?
Okay, my subsequent motion would be that the chair, on behalf of the board of the SRD, write to the, you have the list of people, all of the appropriate provincial and federal people involved in the TAC process, and the chief and council expressing our displeasure with the continued lack of process that is supposed to be followed by the Treaty Advisory Committee.
Okay, seconder? Second by Director Cornfield. Anything further? Director Colburn?
My recollection is that we've written letters, that I don't know where this goes. Where does this go, and what are we hoping to accomplish? I do understand the frustration with the process, and I think that it is, I think it's bigger than that. Is it just here? Is that something that we want to reach out to, other organizations? But I just don't know where this, what it's hoping to accomplish.
Staff?
If I may, Mr. Chair, writing the letter, you're correct, will be pretty simple. I'll just change the dates and the names on one that we sent out 3 or 4 months ago, but it won't be the first time we've sent a letter, and I think we just recently sent one in regards to the Clahoose settlement.
Exactly. Okay, anything further?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Abram?
Just real quick. It's, the old saying of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, We're notifying them once again that they are not following the process that they stood in front of us at our board table and told us they would follow from now on. And that was like a year or two ago. And I guess my motion should have also said, and CC'd to the Minister of Indigenous Relations, whatever he's called this year. So they need to have it keep pounded in that they're not following the process, and we are part of it. I mean, you know, for goodness sakes, this is, you said 5,000 acres, I believe, Charlie, of regional district territory area that is being impacted, and there's change in management practices, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we just had a nice presentation from Mosaic about how they're doing things. Well, you know, let's get some dialogue going with our Treaty Advisory Committee so that we know how things are going outside of groups like Mosaic.
Okay, thank you. We can always try.
I hope so.
Don't see any further debate, so I'll call question on the motions. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. There's no members report.
Thank you.
No management report. No new business. No addendum. No closed. Motion to terminate.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved.
Colburn and Lee. Call question. Anybody opposed? See none carried. See everybody in September.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.